Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty on the feed. Mike and Marty. Mike and Marty.
Good morning, Bellows Falls and Keene, welcome to the feed with Mike and Marty. We're here today with Michelle Voslin and Leslie Goldman. We're going to be talking about Windsor 3 and the race for Windsor 3.
Wyndham 3.
Windham 3.
Let's move north.
Well, that will be my first mistake today. But anyway, we'll be talking about the race and issues that are coming up. But first, Marty with local events.
So, I was searching to find what the movie was this weekend, and lo and behold, there is no movie at the Opera House this weekend because there are a lot of special events happening. But first, let me tell you about the classic movie, which is tonight. It's The Big Lebowski. Yeah. It is indeed a classic movie. Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, very funny. And that is a Happy Birthday Wayne from Camilla Arnold.
Oh, nice.
And I thought that's an interesting option.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That if you have of somebody that you just don't know what to get them, and they have a movie that they maybe want to see on the big screen, you can sponsor it. What a great birthday present. Friday at the Bellows Falls Opera House is the first of the Ashwellet concert series. It's a classical music series. Each one has a theme. I don't know a lot about classical music, so I didn't want to mispronounce classical musician names. So I will let you just look at the poster for this week's concert. There's the one happening Friday night. And if you do want tickets, you need to go to ashwelletconcerts.org. The tickets are not being sold through the Opera House website. There'll be one in Sunday, November 3rd, one Sunday, May 1st, and Friday, June 6th. And in a couple of weeks, a gentleman, Nick Burns, will be coming on the feed to talk more about those concerts. Mm-hmm. We just couldn't fit him in right before this one. So that's happening on Friday night if you're looking for something really different to do here in town. And if you want to do dinner and a concert, you can go to the First Friday Supper fundraiser at the First Baptist Church. This week it's a spaghetti dinner fundraiser. The proceeds will go to the First Baptist Church United Missions in honor of Jane French, who is a longtime First Baptist church member. So it's spaghetti, garlic bread, greens, desserts and beverages, gluten-free and vegetarian options available. You can eat in or to go. They're serving 5 to 6:30, and it's only $9 per adult. I don't think you can get a cheaper meal. On Saturday night, for those that want kind of the extreme opposite of classical music, is Dark Sarcasm. Why can I not say that? Dark Sarcasm, a tribute to Pink Floyd. That is being produced in collaboration with Rockingham Entertainment Development. 6:30 doors open, 7:30 show. Tickets range from $22.50 to $27.50, and there are tickets available. Next Tuesday, mark your calendars because I'm super excited about this. October 8th is Dead English. It's the premiere of the film done by Matt Monroe. We had him here, was it 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Filmmaker moved to Vermont, created this. He's having it, showing it at the Opera House. Tickets are available online, $15, $20 at the door. Please go and support this. He's really looking to kind of
get the film industry going
in Southern Vermont. A great way. We were talking about how to boost the economy, bring young people in. Maybe that's a way to do it. Have the film industry, a small cottage film industry here. So those are the local events.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for coming on. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of timely things going on right now with reports coming out and funding running out and all these amazing things, and you guys are here running for office, and this will be the start of a new legislative session, right?
In January, the new session will start, and so the election on November 5th will determine who's returning to those seats. And there are some things that we can do here in terms of constituents, but we won't be making new policy until January, whoever's elected.
So one of the things I guess we wanted to talk about today was this report that's come out about recommendations for a reorganization of the hospital system in Vermont. Now, I guess maybe you could just, some background, how did the report come about? How was it conducted, and what are the recommendations?
If I may start, Leslie Goldman. Well, back at, and I was actually I served on the healthcare committee. In 2019, Springfield Hospital, very unfortunately, filed for bankruptcy. And that got a lot of people's attention because we can't have hospitals go bankrupt. It's not good for the community. It's not good for the hospital. It's just not a good thing. And the Green Mountain Care Board became very concerned. The Green Mountain Care Board is our regulatory body. It was put into, created, let's say, in 2011 as a body to regulate hospital costs in the goal of improving outcomes, improving access, and lowering costs. The thing about the Green Mountain Care Board, which is written into the statute, is it's subject to open meeting law, so we know exactly what's going on all the time at the Green Mountain Care Board. This is different than other parts of our government, like the Executive Branch, Agency of Human Services. They are not subject to open meeting law.
Can you just, for someone that doesn't understand that, what does open meeting law mean?
Open meeting law, all our boards, our local school boards, our select boards, our everything, they have to do their business in the open. And if you, let's say a 5-member board like our select board, if you have more than 3 people in the room, that is a quorum and you can't do business. So you can never really have 3 people in any board at a room unless it's an officially warned meeting. So these kinds of ideas,
And then the meetings are open to the public.
Right.
Yeah.
So they could be viewed
Just
by Zoom or
so people
sometimes
understand.
Yeah.
people attend in person, but they're not secret meetings. That's
No.
the idea. They're not secret.
Could be
They're
making
public.
backdoor deals.
No backdoor deals.
Exactly, yeah.
They are allowed to go into executive session because dealing with personnel or contracts, and things that if they're in the open might affect the outcome and be negative for taxpayers. But aside from that, it's all in the open. So that's how the Green Mountain Care Board operates. As I say, the Green Mountain Care Board is the regulatory body, so they're the ones that hospitals have to go to get approval for budgets. When Springfield Hospital declared its bankruptcy in 2019, it raised a lot of alarms. And in 2021 or 2, we in the legislature created a bill, and it was called Act 167. And the idea was to do a deep dive in understanding the status of our hospitals and how sustainable they were. Because if Springfield Hospital goes bankrupt, it's obviously not sustainable.
And can I just interject here? Springfield Hospital and Springfield Medical Care Systems as well, right? They're offshoot.
They were connected.
Yeah. 'cause
Yeah,
they went
they were
bankrupt as well.
this. When I think of Springfield Medical, I'm not sure of the overarching
Yeah, I don't know
name.
either. I just know that there was both.
They were all
entities,
connected at the
right,
time.
Right.
And at
Yeah.
this point, some of them are operating
They
separately.
then,
They
as a
have
result
separated,
of the
yeah.
bankruptcy,
They've gone to 2 different
they had
entities.
to split.
Yep.
So what the legislature wanted to know was what is the status of our healthcare system and how sustainable are our hospitals. So we know that from inside Vermont, we have a hospital. It's called Vermont Association of Health and Vermont Association of Health and Health Systems, something along. It's called VAS. It's easier to know the acronym.
It is way easier to know the acronyms than the actual what they stand
Right.
for.
And we have Vermont Medical Society. We have pediatric groups. We have family medicine groups. We have groups of all kinds of people, nursing and whatever, who have been working in Vermont. But up until now, we haven't been able to deal with the problem of sustainability and the functioning of our hospitals financially. As of now, 9 out of 14 hospitals are operating in the red. This was part of meaning that they don't have enough money to pay for their operations. And this was part of the motivation to investigate it and find out what recommendations might be available to us. So they hired a really well-known and an expert in the field of hospital economics in a company called Oliver Wyman. The gentleman who was assigned to do our analysis, Dr. Bruce Hemery, went around the state, talked to many people, and came up with a report. This report was released last week. It's 122 pages. I did sit through the presentation of the report, which was 5 hours. I think you were there for...
I was there for a little bit.
Marty was
Yeah,
there.
I tapped out.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in, and I do have a hard copy of it, so I'm able to page through. The point of this report is that it's an analysis and recommendations. They talk about closing inpatient beds at certain hospitals, 4 in the state, but they're not talking about closing any hospitals at all. Those of us who have been here long enough remember when Rockingham Hospital closed. This was in 1990. And we were very grateful that Springfield Hospital came in, kept the building open, and repurposed it through primary care. There was also physical therapy. Visiting nurses were here for a while. I don't think they are anymore.
No, they're gone.
But the
HCRS is here.
Yeah, HCRS is here. You know, that's our mental health designated agency. So we were able to repurpose this building to continue providing health care for people in Bellows Falls and the surrounding area.
And provide like a wider range, like more of a one-stop shopping for health and social service needs.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? So I think the idea is not close things, but repurpose things. This is a recommendation. It's a menu.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
you got to use the word menu, because that's
Menu.
something I can relate to.
Yeah, because it was a list. And I wish I brought the thing. That was dumb. Because you could see for a place like Springfield, there were 3 different categories. And you could do some of it A, and some of B, and some of C. And, you know, try to create an environment that's financially sustainable, that is not going to require taxpayer supplement for them to remain open. Just to say, back in 2019, when Springfield went bankrupt, the taxpayers of Vermont paid somewhere around $10 or $12 million to help them get out of bankruptcy. I don't know that the taxpayers of Vermont can continue doing that. We need to be more thoughtful and really do the job to
I just
do
want
a
to
better
backtrack
outcome.
a little bit to you saying there's a lot of different agencies, or is one of the problems is which we talk about a lot. I think we talked about this in regards to other things that are problems right now. Are all these agencies kind of working in silos and not maybe cross-talking and looking at the big picture, and do they need to be brought together? And would that be the way to?
I think that is happening. In Act
is happening
167,
now.
it was really clear that the Green Mountain Care Board needed to work with the Agency of Human Services, which is our executive branch. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, someone calling with a comment.
I didn't know this was a call-in show.
No, it isn't. We didn't either.
All right, we don't want to call it.
All right.
No, call-in show would be kind of fun. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, just saying
yes,
that,
the Agency of Human Services, which is the executive branch, and the Green Mountain Care Board, will be working together to analyze this and decide what makes sense. I know there are meetings going on now to try and figure out our next steps, and likely Dr. Henry will be back to give testimony. For those who are sitting in the seats at the Healthcare Committee come January, we will be taking we'll be taking testimony to decide what we need to do. But it was the legislature and the governor who signed this Act 167 to create this analysis. So who's going to lead us through? I think we're at this moment now of uncertainty because we have the report. People feel anxious about it because it is challenging. You know, if you live in the Northeast Kingdom, there's not a lot around. So what makes more sense here? If you live here in Bellows Falls, what makes sense here? So we need to be looking at it regionally and decide how we want to go forward. And at the same time, support our hospital system so people get the care they need in a safe way. We don't want someone to go to a place where they do like 2 knee replacements a year because we want people to have expertise. And I think that's sort of what Dr. Henry was talking about, that
Centers
of
of
Excellence, COE, and that came throughout the report. And I support that idea. If I have a problem, I want to go see someone who really knows what they're doing. They've seen 50 a year, not 2 a year, and that can really help give the best care.
Well, and that's one of the things, I mean, it's sort of a natural change over time. I mean, if you think back 100 years ago, everybody went to their general practitioner
Yes,
and
they
they did
did.
just about everything. And over time, that's had to change. So, I mean, even like I think about a local hospital like Grace Cottage, I know a woman who had the last baby that was born at Grace Cottage, and I believe her daughter's 21 now. And they realized maternity care was too much. Doing maternity care was like, you know what, there are other places people can go and have a baby. We're going to focus on other things. And so it used to be, if you lived there, close by, you could go have a baby. And now you don't go there. You go to Brattleboro or you go to Keene. And that's okay. It's not a problem necessarily to go to somewhere where they have a specialty. You know, we're not saying you're going to have to hopefully go to Boston or something like that. There still will be services provided within Vermont, but you may have to travel a little bit farther to get those more specialized services, as Leslie's saying. I mean, if even in those days, if you think about Grace Cottage, if they weren't doing a lot of births and you had a birth trauma, that's going to be, a higher risk than if you go somewhere where they've had a lot of expertise in that area. So it really could end up serving Vermonters really well. It's just, we have to get used to, we're not going to get everything as close as we did before. We might have to travel a slightly different way, or go, instead of getting our service here in Bellows Falls, maybe we have to go to Springfield, or maybe for certain things, even, higher level of care, maybe you're gonna have to go to Burlington for the really more difficult kinds of procedures. But then we know that you're gonna be getting really good care, and that's what we want. We want people to have good care.
So I just want to add, if I could.
That's my kind of question. We try to trade off.
Okay.
No, I was
you'll-
going to make a snide comment, but
Nope.
I won't.
I'm like laughing. I just want to comment on what Michelle said. One of the things in the report talked about off-site care, so ambulatory surgical centers, or a birthing center that is not attached to a hospital, so freestanding birthing centers. These are great ideas. So a freestanding birthing center might be what we need in Windham County, which will be a center of excellence for births. So there was a lot of interesting and thoughtful, and almost everything that he recommended, he connected with a place where it was happening, in Wyoming, in Nebraska, and wherever. So it's not new stuff, it's just a reorganization and a rethinking of our system, which is incredibly hard to do.
And then I think we can, Michelle, maybe you can talk about some of the topics that are so related to it: housing, transportation, like lack of so you're talking about transport. You have to go to 45 minutes for this. Well, how do you get there? Our EMS, we're short EMS.
That was one of his recommendations, very pointedly, that our EMS system needs to be restructured, and that our EMS providers need to be paid at a professional rate. I absolutely agree.
So you wanted to talk a little bit about homeless and housing, and because that's another huge component. We can't, if we wanted to bring in new people, maybe we need to bring in new doctors for the centers of excellence. Where are they going to find even housing for people that can afford housing isn't happening.
Right. And I mean, housing is a huge topic that we could spend several days
It's
talking about,
true,
much
but,
less the remaining 10 minutes.
But-
In terms of sort of tying it back to this case, I would say looking at the emergency side of things is something that has come up in a big way in the last couple of weeks. And I mean, it's been a long and complicated process in terms of how to deal with folks that were housed in emergency housing during the pandemic. I mean, Vermont was sort of looked at as a model of, wow, look at this. We have all these individuals who are unhoused. We're providing shelter and keeping them safe and preventing the spread of COVID. So during the pandemic, we were sort of looked at as we had this model that was really great. And we had all these federal dollars that came in to support those costs. Well, then when the federal dollars stopped supporting them, we had a very hard decision. And I say we, meaning pretty much all Vermonters, including people in the legislature and the governor. What do we do with these individuals who don't have homes and don't have a place to transition to, including a shelter? And so it's been a process. I mean, the last couple of years, we've looked at it in a very intense way in the legislature. And in 2023, there was the governor actually had no funding to continue emergency housing in his budget. And there literally was a point where it looked like 3,000 people were going to be transitioned into the street literally into the street or the woods with no housing. We just did not have housing. And we ended up that year passing an emergency bill in June at our veto session to extend it. And the goal was it would extend emergency housing through April of 2024. And then this last spring, we looked at the budget, we put some money in, we changed the parameters a bit, and there were some restrictions that were made on how many people could be housed in subsequent time periods. But that was with the caveat that as of April 2024, which was the budget that we had approved in 2023, those individuals that were in emergency housing were supposed to be transitioned into either congregate shelters or individual shelters. Like at one point, Morningside in Brattleboro, you had an individual room in a shelter, or housing. The idea was not, when the money runs out, we go back and transition people into the street. And in our budget last year that came to us from the governor, there was $30 million that was missing. There was no funding, zero funding for emergency housing. And the House and the Senate agreed this is not acceptable. So we put some funds back in. But when we did that, Some of that is running out right now. So like since September 15th, between September 15th and October 15th, it looks like about 1,000 people are going to lose their hotel shelter. And most of the people that are in those positions are people that are very vulnerable. By definition, the ones that are still housed are ones, they're elder folks that are on oxygen, they're women with children, they're all kinds of people that have really intensive needs that are going to be in really difficult states when they're exited without a place to go, and they're going to end up landing in our emergency rooms and our hospitals without appropriate care. And so actually just this week, I believe yesterday, a group of legislators, including both senators and I think it was 6 senators and 85 House members, including Leslie and myself, signed a letter asking the governor to access some of the emergency funds to come up with some kind of strategy to protect these vulnerable individuals between now and December. Because when there is a cold weather, what's called a cold weather conditions, in December, people will be eligible to get housed again.
Oh, okay.
But it's pretty darn cold right now as well. And I worked at Groundworks last year, and as a case manager, and I know some individuals that are still unhoused, that don't have, the shelter is full, they have vouchers, they can't find a place to use them. And one of these individuals that I know has an autoimmune disease, and stress makes it worse. Mm-hmm. And this person is sleeping in their car. Well, you can imagine, is that person likely to end up going back into the medical system because of health issues? Yes. And so they are very, very intertwined. And just like with the healthcare situation, there is absolutely no easy answer. But
that's what I'm saying is everything is such a hard nut to crack.
There was one thing that really was not done well, in my opinion, which was there was supposed to be this setup, and it's not an ideal system, but it was sort of a compromise solution, was there were supposed to be 4 what they call congregate shelters, meaning like you imagine like a high school gym with a bunch of cots, and everybody stays in that kind of setting. So in the winter, that will keep people alive. And if we have that, that is absolutely better than nothing. We don't have those right now. They were actually temporarily set up in June for an initial wave of people that were going to be unsheltered. And the number, there were 4 of them set up around the state. They were set up at the very last minute. Like literally some of the shelters were set up like 2 days before they were opened, they were set up. They were not set up in close proximity to where the individuals who are unhoused are residing. And so there were cases where people had to walk 2 or 3 miles in order to get to a shelter, so they didn't go to the shelter.
Of course not.
They slept in the woods, they slept downtown, they slept in their cars. And so when there was very low utilization of those congregate shelters, they were open a very short time. Like most of them were open, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, and they closed down. But you know what? It's getting cold, and people are going to freeze. And the governor right now has authority to reactivate some of those emergency funds to, at the very least, provide congregate shelter where people will not get hypothermia and freeze to death. Mm-hmm. And as a person who voted on this budget that had some safety nets, who is not actively in session right now, I really hope that the governor will use his Agency of Human Services to look at some solutions right now. Because some of those steps that we wanted, transitioning people into appropriate housing, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the rules have changed.
Is there even appropriate housing available?
In terms of optimum housing, no, there is not optimum housing available.
Curious.
But could congregate shelter be set up? Yes, they did it in June, and those are now closed. Are they optimum? No. Mm-hmm. But is that better than, especially when it starts to be freezing at night? Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that's better.
Mike, we have about 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I would just raise a question this is going back to the hospital systems. Has anyone looked at the reimbursement side? I mean, we're looking at making the hospital side more efficient. And the reason we're doing that is because Medicare and Medicaid pay below cost. Most private insurances, you have to negotiate, and they base their rates on Medicare and Medicaid, and that causes just a difficulty. Has anyone looked at why can't we get the reimbursement rates to a point where hospitals can sustain themselves?
You are absolutely right. Medicare and Medicaid are underfunded. Medicaid is the state program, but it is very intimately entwined with Medicare. Medicare is federal, so we are tied to federal reimbursement. Right now, there's something called the AHEAD model, and that's an acronym which I couldn't possibly tell you what it stands for. But Vermont was chosen as a state. We applied and was chosen as a state to negotiate waivers, is what it's called. So one of the waivers, and one of the most important ones, is to increase our Medicare reimbursement. Once we get that increase, we can increase our Medicaid reimbursement. Of course, increasing our Medicaid reimbursement, which is good for hospitals and the medical system, will increase the general fund and our taxes. We have to decide as a state where we want our taxes to go. It's very complex, as you
It is,
just
it's
said.
crazy,
It's
and
all intertwined. Do I think we need better reimbursement to sustain our medical system? Yes. But where does the money come from? Also another question. But that is in negotiation right now. If we get that waiver, we will get much higher reimbursements from the feds. And that's really important because that'll be federal money. We have to remember that Vermont is a receiving state. We get more money from the feds than we put in. This is like Mississippi or Alabama. So Vermont is that state.
And we're going to have
Yeah.
to unfortunately cut you off there.
This is a
No, it's the
long
second time.
conversation.
We could be here for
Thank
weeks.
you.
But, well, thank you. And I just have to say, I in hearing all this, and maybe you will echo it,
Yes.
how do we fix it? I don't know. But you guys are willing to put yourselves
try.
out there to take it on.
That's right.
It's
Baby
all.
steps in the right direction. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain things that need complete systemic change, and systemic change takes time. It's not quick.
And we're gone.
Oh, no. Sorry.
My community. Yeah, sorry. We just got two.
Local news, politics, business, sports, arts, music. Mike and Marty.